They say the moon is silent, but silence can hold echoes, and light can be a language. Scattered across the lunar surface are strange, swirling patterns, bright, ghostly trails dancing over the dust of a dead world. NASA calls them lunar swirls, but some scientists, the quiet ones, call them something else: the scars of thought. These luminous shapes don't belong. They don't align with craters. They don't fade with time. And sometimes, when we look long enough, they appear to shift. No known force explains them. No impact could have drawn them. They glow brightest where darkness should fall. This is not just a story about patterns of light on rock. This is a descent into what may be memory or madness. The moon has no weather, no wind, no water. Its surface, frozen in time, should hold only the scars of impacts, violent, chaotic, and random. But lunar swirls are not random. They are delicate, smooth, and patterned, like fingerprints pressed into stone by an invisible hand. These luminous marks can span hundreds of kilometers. They twist and curve across ancient plains, some of them bright as chalk, others barely visible under the sun. And all of them seem protected. Around each swirl, satellites detect mysterious magnetic fields, small, localized, and utterly alien. The moon, as far as we know, has no global magnetic field. And yet, here, something generates magnetic bubbles strong enough to shield the surface from solar radiation. These regions are whiter, untouched, as if light itself has been preserved like a relic. Scientists suggest they were caused by comet impacts or ancient lava flows carrying magnetic material. But those theories don't explain the precision. They don't explain why the patterns never fade, or why they appear in places where no known impact occurred. Reiner Gamma, the most famous swirl, sits exposed on a lunar plain with no crater in sight. It shimmers like a symbol, a sign drawn for eyes that haven't yet evolved to read it. What purpose does it serve? And who, or what, could have placed it there? Most scientists explain the lunar swirls with natural theories, magnetic anomalies, ancient impacts, solar wind interactions. But there are others, the fringe thinkers, the ones who look too long into the void, who whisper different ideas. They suggest that the swirls are not natural at all, that their precision, their persistence, and their impossible magnetism point to something older and thinking. What if the swirls are intentional markings, not art, not accidents, but messages, patterns meant to be preserved across eons, visible only to creatures who learn to look from space? Their placement aligns with no tectonics, no terrain logic. Their shape, when seen from orbit, evokes symbols, language perhaps, or a recording, not of sound, but of thought, etched into the dust by something that doesn't speak as we do. And then there is the deeper theory, the one whispered in closed rooms and forgotten forums, that the moon is not a passive body, that it has always been watching, and that these luminous scars are its memories, moments not of geology, but of trauma. It was supposed to be routine. In 2027, the unmanned Selene 4 lander was sent to study Reiner Gamma, the moon's most famous swirl. Scientists hoped to scan its magnetic field directly to better understand why it glowed with such haunting clarity. But from the moment it descended, something was wrong. The lander's instruments reported brief magnetic pulses, rhythmic, like a signal. Its cameras glitched. Audio channels meant to be silent began picking up soft distortions, like whispers just outside the human range. Mission Control dismissed them as interference. The lander touched down, deployed its drills, and began to collect samples. Then it sent back a frame, just one, that changed everything. A still image, dust, shifting, not in the wind, for there is no wind, but lifting, like something below the surface was breathing. The next signal was corrupted. Then came silence. Protocol demanded a manned follow-up. Months later, a new crew, Selene 4 Echo, was dispatched. 2 astronauts, calm, experienced, ready for anything. Or so we thought. For 3 days, telemetry was normal. The team set up sensors, surveyed the site, joked with ground control, until day 4, when they stopped responding. Cameras caught only fragments, a blurred shape moving past the habitat, dust curling unnaturally in corners, strange light patterns, not from the sun, but emerging from the swirls themselves. Then the final transmission arrived. It came from the commander. His voice, cracked and uneven, spoke only one sentence. "It's not the moon. It's something wearing its skin." The signal cut. No distress beacon, no emergency protocol. A rescue mission was denied. Official statements blamed radiation damage, equipment failure, isolation. But those in mission control remember. They remember the dust that rose without wind, the shadows that moved where nothing lived, and the symbols, the swirling patterns that seemed to glow, just slightly brighter, after the crew disappeared. To this day, no mission has returned to Reiner Gamma. But some say, if you point a high-gain antenna toward the site on a cold lunar night, you'll hear faint static, and, sometimes, breathing. We once thought the moon was dead, a lifeless rock, frozen in time, a silent witness to creation, a stable place in the shifting dance of the cosmos. But sometimes, the quietest places keep the loudest secrets. The swirls remain, decades of study, dozens of missions, and still, we don't know why they're there. Their brightness doesn't fade, their shapes don't erode. They twist in ways that mimic thought, loops, spirals, branching curves, patterns meant to be seen from afar, not walked upon. Perhaps they were never meant for us. Perhaps the moon was marked long before Earth had oceans, by something that needed a surface to write upon, and a language that could survive extinction. We call them swirls because we lack a better term. But in the hush of deep space, what if they're not swirls, but veins, vessels, memories, traces of something that once moved through the moon like blood through flesh? Some theorists, banned from publication, erased from symposiums, believe the moon was used, that the swirls are its side effects, that Reiner Gamma and others are not anomalies, but remnants, not what remains of something that visited the moon, but what was left behind. What kind of mind leaves symbols carved in magnetism? What kind of entity speaks in loops of light and dust? We don't know, and maybe we shouldn't. There is a danger in seeing too clearly, in listening too closely. Light is not always knowledge. It can also be a lure, a trap, a beacon for the next mind that dares to understand. So when you gaze up tonight and the moon is full, tilt your head slightly, squint into the brightness. You may glimpse a faint swirl where no map says there should be one. And if you feel something watching you back, turn away, because some lights were never meant to guide. Some were meant to warn.